Good evening, all.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Oh,
All right. Another week, another office hours.
the number 250, something like that.
Sorry, what was that?
I say it's the number 250 for you of office
I,
hours.
I think we're at 200. I think it's 268.
No, that.
It's nuts.
Yes.
Oh boy. But maybe the sixth with this new format. I'm gonna still count up from zero though. 268.
What kind of change did you bring? Did you say new format? What was it before?
Before it was more like hanging out and talking about, what happened during the week or what people were thinking about. It was basically no structure.
Ah, okay.
Show up, hang out.
It's just a meeting
Yeah.
and a drink after work, like.
Well, Mateus would sit there with his cigar out back.
Yeah, it's
And,
just a hangout. People sharing links. It's sort of a live version of what's happening on the Discord.
Yeah, that's right.
Nice.
That's a good way of putting it. But then we changed the structure to side projects, so people sharing what they're working on. And I think it's working out pretty well because I never got like extensive feedback, not that I really asked for it, but sometimes some people would be like, oh, so what do you do? And I'd be like, we hang out and talk. And it was just like so bewildering to people. Huh? Imagine you're sitting at a pub and you're just kind of hanging out with friends in the corner and you're talking for 3 hours. And they're like, yeah, but on Zoom, it's still confusing.
Yeah, with no purpose of something
Yeah,
behind it.
yeah, yeah. So are there meeting notes? It's like, sorry, action items? Any action items? Like what? Then you realize like how people use the particular thing for Zoom. But yeah, so that's been the evolution. But so we've got 3 side project presentations this week. And let's see. We've got Mateas, Gustav, or Gustave? Gustav?
Gustav.
Gustav.
French.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's French thing.
Yeah. Very French. And Stan. Yeah. Okay, cool. Great. Everyone's here. This is awesome. It's gonna work out. So yeah, I think we should just get right into it. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
The side project. So in order of who submitted, we start with Mateus.
Yay. Okay, let's see. Do I already have share permission? Okay.
Good.
So 10 minutes.
10
and then
minutes.
we do a 20-minute discussion. That's 10 minutes.
Let's see. There we go. Should now see my keynote, right? Lovely. Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm very happy to present for the first time in this new format. So it's a small project I've been doing, doodling on for a bit. Forms of AI. I'll get to what it's about in a second. Whoops, there we go. Okay, so first off, of course, content notice. all generative AI models are based on stolen works of actual creators, as well as reliant on extracting labor from undervalued ghost workers. And the author of this presentation, that is me, acknowledges this unethical state of affairs, but I hope that the work merits a useful discussion nonetheless. So that's just the disclaimer, of course, obligatory. So I'm did this thing where I was curious how generative AI reflects the design of human bureaucracies. Bureaucracies being any way we all the paper trails that we leave. Sorry, when we interact with an organization, a government, applying for jobs, whatever. So about 2 years ago, I used Midjourney. I think it was Midjourney 3. So I generated some 700 different designs. You can see some examples throughout the presentation. It's the one on the right. And the prompts were usually along the lines of like, you know, bureaucratic 70s housing contract in Soviet bloc, job application for undead people. Not, well, those kind of things anyway. And I just collected these, and I didn't really know what to do with them. So they've been lying on the drive for 2 years, and I figured I should do something about it. My original intent with this, or rather what started me off with this, was me as I have an art background, and then I've moved into UX and UX design, and it's always been this notion that there are best practices for how to do things. For example, I mean, the grid system, the Swiss grid system is still very much big. So we try to streamline how we design things. And I never liked it when something is too prescriptive, right? So the grid system allows you to have a very clear information architecture, create clear hierarchy of content and so on. But whenever you use a system, when it becomes so frictionless, it hides the assumptions that you make of your user, right? And we see this in in bureaucratic forms, right? So depending on how a form is structured, if you apply for housing or benefits or a job, whatever, you always have these assumptions about, okay, what is important for the people who has created this form or this interactive paper tool or web tool, whatever. So I'm curious, sort of like, what are the things that are hidden when the design becomes so invisible because our only goal is to do something frictionless. All right, then going back even before the Swiss, we have the ornament as a crime, the Adolf Loos argument that we should strip everything away. This quote has very much to do with his time and the architecture that preceded it, which was very ornamental. But we still have this assumption that form follows function. And by saying this, we sort of relegate form to something. Well, we ignore the form, I think, beyond just the aesthetics. So today, for example, we have design systems, right? So if you're a UXer or UI person, I'm sure you have played around with the design systems, for example, that we have like Material Design or Apple. So each company has their own. And we do this to minimize friction while still keeping the branding and the information architecture and comply with accessibility requirements and so on. But this also means that the design, both web design, app design, but also on paper, it's the only thing that's left is ornamentation. We don't think, or sorry, I shouldn't generalize. It's easy to ignore the possibility of design to think about how to conceptualize a problem or a solution, and more becomes about meeting KPIs or particular goals or streamline stuff. Again, like form follows function, just do the button bigger, right? So I'm trying to think about how I can use these forms, which I mean, and I'm a paper geek. I really enjoy forms. When I went to Japan recently, I was buying like printed out checkbooks, even though I don't read Japanese, because I just liked how they look. Because it feels like it tells me something about the culture, the material culture of a new society that I don't know much about. So I had these 700 different images, and I came up with this. So we can use these as templates or cues for forcing a designer to use them as the baseline for a new design. So I'll show you an example of what I mean here. By using these generated forms or layouts, we can force a designer to say, okay, pretend that the graph you see on your right, that's the homepage of Twitter. And now you have to come up with why would the homepage of Twitter look like this? Or why would your prescription paper from your doctor look like this? Now you have to solve it. And it might, by forcing a designer to think about, you have to assume that this is sort of the design system that you have to solve for. Why would this design system look the way it does, right? So I'm not saying that this will open up great, fantastic ideas to new aesthetics or new designs, but it forces you as a designer to reconsider what your users and what you are take for granted when you're designing stuff. And it might actually open up new ideas about, how to think about the problem. What is the most important thing when you're applying for a job? What is the most important thing when you're applying for care for your pet, whatever? So I have a couple of just some of these are more abstract than others, of course. And because this is Midjourney 3, all the lettering is gobbledygook. You can't really make anything out, which is, fits my purposes quite well. So what I did here, I took some of these and I changed them to one color and I printed them on a risograph. For those of you who don't know, risograph, they basically look like office copiers, but it's a cold print technique, which only prints one color at a time. Most of the machines only print one color at a time. And as opposed to laser printers, you can actually draw on these. So this is ink that soaks into the paper, so you don't get that annoying function of laser printing where you can't really draw on it. And then I printed a bunch of these and I notebook glued them together just to make them into tear-off sheets. So the idea being that I could have a stack of 50 different, each stack has 50 different forms generated. They're bound together just by glue. You tear it off, you use it for sketching, and that's it. I really like the ephemeral thing of paper. I mean, the prints are crappy, the AI generated images are crappy, but maybe if you use them within a particular rule or game setup, you could actually have this, might actually generate something interesting, right? So for example, one suggested workshop would be get 10 designers or whatever together, and everyone gets a block of these and cues for what they should do, right? So this might be use the form on the right to create a thread main page or a car lease contract or a discharge medical form. Why would discharge medical form look the way it does, right? And you do the whole workshopy thing. So people get to draw on these and play around. And the other thing is, of course, you need to have a presentation. So everyone has to pick one or two of the designs that they have created and present it as if it's a pitch for a stakeholder, right? So no, I actually do believe that our receipts from the store should look like this skull on the right, right? Or the head on the right. And these are my designery reasons for doing it that way. So these last two things, this is how I want to use it, just to see what people make of it. And I have a bunch of different thoughts and ideas, but I'm curious if this vibes with any of you, and if you have any comments, I'd love to hear them. And that was it, coming in at 9 minutes, I think.
Awesome. Yeah, right on time.
I think in the form of other projects, I've seen the value of the mass production value of in terms of design that AI allows us. So, I just as a general idea, the sense that I could just kind of say to it, so to speak, create 50 designs with a lot of white space, but make them cool and just put them together and use that as writing paper or idea paper, just kind of a random idea generator almost, as a background to draw on. I just like that idea just in general. The manufacturing of design, mass production of design, that seems interesting to me.
So I'm curious if you took these designs and you were actually able to feed them back to the AI and said, tell me what these are good for displaying information about.
I haven't tried that. And I think I'm coming down on the side of, I guess I'm not that interested in that particular. I'm more interested in how can we, if now AI is here to stay, I'm curious what does that allow us to do as grow as humans, right? So I'd rather see it as a tool for experimenting and like your own creativity rather than just as a plaything where you riff and vibe with an AI. So short answer is I haven't tried it. No.
Who would you see this as a potential tool for? Would this be like teams within an organization that are thinking about like publishing information in the best way, or what are you thinking?
I'm thinking like the first thing I just want to see what do other design, the people who do like UI design or information architecture or service design, how would they would this be beneficial for forcing them to rethink some aspect of what they're doing? So it's basically like a creative toy, I guess. But some of these could be used for I imagine that they might be useful for generating new ideas for, okay, how do we have a design problem. So we need to distinguish ourselves somehow in the marketplace. So what can we do which is really weird and wacko while still being accessible to people with like screen readers? Okay, so how do we do it? But for me, I'm very much a workshopping type of person, so I thought this was mostly workshop play thing, I think. If that makes sense.
Scott?
Yeah, I can see two very different uses. One is just helping newer designers read design. So obviously there's the prompt you use to generate them, and there's lots of, let's say there's things working and then things not working. So you're guessing at intentionality, blah, blah, blah. But that's a useful skill to learn what is legible, blah, 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 for new designers. The other thing, when you were talking about the game, I was thinking of the equivalent in cartography, where, if you just ask people to obey the lines of the map as drawn, you're then limited to the mindset of the existing cartography. So in my comment on the game part would be, use the principles of the whatever sheet that you've pulled off to then make a thing versus literally draw on it. I wouldn't, as a participant, I would immediately want to break what you've versus coloring it in, so to speak. I mean, there's, I guess, a level of coloring it in, which might be interesting too, but it seems more like take whatever principles you see here, accidental or not, and then make a thing from those. That would be a very useful exercise. I could see that and fun.
Yeah. I like the map analogy. I hadn't thought about it, but that's really great. And I think what these prints are just some I pulled off basically for this presentation. So, and to get it out of my head onto paper. But I imagine, as you say, some of the things I should take out, right? So edit out some of the text or edit out some of the more specific, because otherwise people are going to get stuck on trying to interpret what they are seeing too much, I think. So.
Well, it's
Yeah,
like
I'll have to try it.
it's like any kind of, it could be from any other, if you look at if you don't know Japanese and you're looking at Japanese graphic design, you can still make guesses about hierarchy, placement, layout, blah, blah, blah. You can still do that. So even though it's kind of gibberish, the language, it's still open to understanding the system of it. If anything, I would push these to be more different. They're still more or less within the same family of the ones you've shown me, or
Yeah,
shown
yeah.
us so far. Yeah.
I think Stan is next.
What I was thinking of is actually while you guys were talking, I just sort of thought like, wow, this would be a great idea for an adult coloring book or something like that. I'm just joking though. So I immediately, as soon as you shared with us as an instructional designer, I thought, wow, like these would be great to use for ideas to create job aids and visual guides. And there's quite a fair bit of information architecture that goes into creating a really good job aid or a really good visual reference guide or anything like that. And so I thought this could be really good for an inspiration when designing a portfolio piece, but also perhaps for when we're dealing with, say, a very technical type of training that requires the knowledge of like these forms and what needs to go where. And the one thing that the one type of training that I've worked on in the past is, for instance, how to do a waste walk, which is something where you go around a site, could be a construction site, and you look for different types of wastes. There's like 8 different types of waste, and you have to fill out a form on that. So like a visual form like this would be great to have as part of the training. Now, what that form looks like, that's a whole different story. I'm not quite sure. So these could be a great inspiration for something like that.
Yeah, thanks. I think I've had this also in my back of my mind because of 2 things, right? We bought one of these really tiny jacuzzi blow-up pools, and the instructional manual was complete garbage because it tried to apply like the same solution for 20 different models, and we couldn't find the correct buttons and whatever. And so that, and also I'm starting up a company, right? And so have a lot of back and forth with the IRS here in Sweden to register properly, and I don't get it. I don't think I'm a stupid person, but it makes me feel so stupid. And I really hate with like when the information systems make you feel like such a dum-dum. And like so this idea of, okay, how if this is how if these forms is how it would look to register a company, it would make no difference to me because they're just as unintelligible as what I'm actually doing, more or less. So I like the so suddenly when I started thinking about this, I really see it all around me. So it's really interesting to hear about the information architecture and instruction perspective of this. And I think the coloring book is a good idea. I mean, if you're in the office and you go like, yeah, I hate my meetings, and you go like, yeah, okay, let's color in how this meeting maps onto this stupid layout.
Sandro.
Oh, yeah, I love the randomness as I mentioned, and I'm thinking of like tea leaves or like Taoist, like when you throw the sticks.
Yeah, the
and then
I Ching.
yeah, and how sometimes what you create is beautiful, right? Like they're beautiful shapes. There must be something about the mysticism there. And then I think of like the like the Dushtil guys like Mondrian, Malevich, who else isn't like anyway, just general geometric art that's balanced in the Swiss style, right? Not necessarily the Swiss style, but like something that is considered. That's the kind of stuff you could train a model on very easily, right? You could just literally give it a bunch of photos of art and style guides and so on, and ask it to make something balanced and attractive. I don't know what the prompt would be. You could play around. And it would create beautiful things, right? And it would create them in bulk. And you could rig this up with a printer and have this all automated and just kind of keep giving yourself ideas. So I think of like this idea of maybe this is a way, maybe I'm off topic, but where people can have a ritualized interaction with random design, right? And so they learn to engage with forms they certainly have never seen before. And those might be more interesting to look at than a white piece of paper or the gray walls around them, right? Just like a cheap way to get people seeing new design that would probably be mostly beautiful, right? I think that's kind of and it costs $1 at the the dollar store, right? That would be great. Yeah, that's what I'm seeing in this.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense. And I think this is just like this is half the thing, because there's no problem generating these kind of things, as you say, as much as you can humanly want in like 10 minutes. The other point is how you frame the exercise, whether you do like a workshop as I'm proposing, or like you have an I Ching daily horoscope based on these or whatever. It's like the way you frame it in order to make it meaningful for you, whether it's as a design practitioner or as a person just trying something out or calming yourself, whatever. I think that's like the rules and the ideas surrounding this. That's, I imagine, is the most or at least as important as whatever artifacts
I mean,
are
this
produced.
shocks you in thought. Like, what the hell is this? Like, someone shows me this, and for some reason, I decide to spend mental energy like considering it, right? I'm gonna be like, what the? And then I'm gonna start seeing things. I see things like every time I look at it, right? The right one sort of looks like some kind of report of and like something sanctuary. What's like tercinal? Is that a new kind of fuel? Like you know what I mean? Like as a provocation, right? I think it's great. And I could probably, if I focused, maybe come up with something half interesting that has nothing to do with obviously design, which means nothing, which is sort of the point. But I would, it's almost like a visual version of Eno's kind of inspiration cards or whatever they're called, right? Yeah. Anyway, I really like it. Yeah, I like the feeling you're giving me. This is it's a very pleasant presentation because of this.
Thank you very much.
Drew.
Yeah, thanks. I guess when I look at it and thinking about a workshop like you described, my mind goes to deconstruction and gamifying it. So like if it were my exercise, I would probably cut them up and break them up into cards so that they were components, modular components, instead of like whole cloth. Like the whole thing is it's hard for me to access it. But I think the components in them are very useful. And then maybe the workshop is design a form for X in your enterprise or for your company. And then you have these design components that are very abstract, right? So you've got the dots and filled in dots, and you've got like the bar charts with the arrows, and then it would be on the participants to take these more abstract components and put them together and then explain what the components are of the form.
Yeah, and I think that like the getting people in the mindset of like telling a story about this must be one of the best outcomes, because if you can tell a compelling story, then you can start questioning it and values, okay, what are we really telling, what are we omitting, and all that. So I really like how to practically use these to make it more accessible. I'm all up for like whether it's cut up or forcing rules, or like making it more of prescriptive game out of it or whatever. I think that's great. I think I had as a reference, by the way, here. I've realized that not everyone knows about it. The PowerPoint karaoke. If you haven't heard about it, it's a fantastic game. I've hosted it twice. It's basically you download a PowerPoint presentation like random online, and you randomly get to select it, and then without previewing it beforehand, you need to talk in front of an audience, do the presentation. And it's like some people really choke, but some people are so convincing and so good when you have a kiddie football league report on new membership drives, and you have to do a presentation as if to like for your real stakeholders, and you have to take questions from the audience. It's fantastic, but it requires like people making a real effort to buy into this and presenting it. Then And I think going back to these, if you can present these and actually have to convince people and tell a story, that discussion that it spawns usually are really fulfilling and interesting.
That PowerPoint karaoke is pretty much my whole career. So
Yeah.
So just to keep
It's like
things,
everyone's career. Yeah, sorry.
sorry, I just want to say, just to keep things tight, so we have time for other talks. So why don't we do? So I think Benjamin's the only one who hasn't had a chance to.
I mean, thanks for the opportunity. I wasn't planning on talking today. I was just going to watch, but I actually found it really inspiring. I'm a product manager, so like, not the designer myself. And I remember the first time I was introduced to a grid system by my designer, and my mind was blown. And I just wanted to say, like, does a really good job of, really coming down to like, what is the role of a designer in a team? I think in a world where AI can create that, design guide, style guide, and there are all these standards, and you're measured by your KPIs, and introducing friction has always been something that is important, but is challenging to get the upper levels to sign off on. I think that in a world where you can get to that frictionless state so quickly, a designer that can go above and beyond that and introduce a like novel approach that doesn't decrease conversion, hurt the business, and actually increases business is like what good designers are going to be able to do. So I just want to say, like, good job. Like the core of like the problem you're tackling is like awesome, and thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, it remains to be seen whether this is better, like a conscious designer, is that better than really fast A/B testing, right? For business goals. It might not be, but in the end, we need to have, in Swedish, there's a saying, right? You're not having more fun that you're creating yourself, right? So you need to enjoy your life somehow. And I think like intellectually stimulating yourself with these kind of exercises and games, I think it's make life more fun, and potentially it might actually be beneficial in some way as well. So
Why not both? You got to have
excellent.
something to test. So
Oh, totally. I mean, but as I said, it remains to be seen, right? Because it's so easy to be. My previous career was as a photographer, right? But photography is more and more becomes if you say that you have a staff photographer, it's mostly about you want to be, it becomes a brand. We actually pay someone to take pictures, even though we could buy stock pictures for like 1/10 of the price. But it becomes a way to, well, brand yourself. So, and the same thing might happen with designers, most likely, because now you can just transition from Figma into what functioning design. Not perfectly, but sooner or later, and you can A/B test it and automatically do it. So what's the point of having a designer at all, right? So it's also me for just trying to motivate my own professional existence, especially now when I'm trying to strike it out on my own. So and I have to have fun. I mean, otherwise life's too boring.
Sage words from.
Thank you.
Sandra, if it's okay, we'll push on to the next presentation. Maybe you can, or if you have a remark.
Thank you for all the comments and all the
Thank
feedback.
you,
I really
Mateus.
Oh, I'm
appreciate it.
sorry. I didn't even realize it. You got to lower your hand, of course. Sorry about that.
Yes. So yeah, that was great, Mateus. I guess my only closing thought would be that I really like the inversion. So going the other way, starting with the system, and then asking people to try to make sense of it. Going backwards is that's definitely my vibe. Puzzle game. What world did this come from? Cool. Okay, I think Gustav is next.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, do you see everything? Yeah, do you see my screen? Yeah. So it's an exploration. I'm going to bring you in. It's a bit of a journey. So I'm a designer. I've studied like architecture design, but more interior architecture. And I've graduated like 4 years ago. And my diploma was about, I really asked my question of the use of designers. It's a bit like Mateusz, like the role of designers in this era, this challenging time. And I asked myself, what if designers were very able to shape the world we're going to live after? So I went on an exploration asking myself, let's imagine a world where, we have merged technologies and we have merged our lifestyle with nature. We're merged, not harmonious one, but let's say we have a harmonious, or let's say we have a merged lifestyle, technology, etc. How will it look like? So the first part is I created a world, large world where, and a long story of the world, like from the first age to the fifth age. So it's a long story starting from a place where, it's tribes. They live in harmony with nature. They have, their own rights, their own life going. And, I do, so I'm going to quickly do this. It's working. They have created like a really deep connection with nature and what's around them. And so they build architecture and they build design according to this feeling and according to this, this trust they have built, like the ships. Everything needs, and all the behavior needs to be respectuous of nature, etc., etc. So they evolve, but then nature gets annoying. It gets unpredictable. So they start to want to control more. And then the object takes the shape of, the need of control, like more and more. So it's age 2, they start to need comfort. They start to be less and less in need of, connection, but they're like, okay, we need protection. And then they create the civilization, with the need of more and more control, extractivism. And like in my fantasy, I said, okay, they create tools, they create machines that the only role is to extract. So that's the shape design takes, an architecture. It's like, okay, it's mean and it's the shape of it. It's okay, it's use, it's destruction, extraction, war. It's general, but it was my exploration, war, like protection, submarines, etc., etc. And then they have a moment where it's kind of the era we're living. It's but a bit fantasy one. It's like a object that take the shape of controlling tools, more and more extractivism, defending themselves against opponents. So they take like the shapes of robots that try to control the borders, trying to be like more and more, in the organization of the city. The birth of advertising as well. And then there is a moment, and that's the moment when I kind of switch in my head, and it's the other part of the project. So I'm kind of doing fast for this. There is a cataclysm, like I would say, like COVID, and from extracting and extracting, they kind of eat a push of gas, and this gas corrupts everything in the city, and they have to make an harmonious connection with nature. They have to do it. It's like a life or death for them. So they invent objects and they invent, architecture. They need to blend with the cycle of life. So the thing I tried to do, like it was oh, would these objects look like? Or would this interaction with nature like? What would be the behavior? What would be the lifestyles? And further, I was going into that world. I was kind of obsessed because I thought there was like a missing point of like, okay, what if we blended with it creatively? It's so interesting to say, okay, the only thing is like everything starts from the ecosystem. And then, you can go more and more up. It's like if the ecosystem has to be harmonious, the objects, the civilization could be interesting. It's so interesting to build, to craft. Like what would be the lifestyle? Would they be sedentarian? Would they steal? Would there be wars, etc.? So it was like 4 years ago, and I've done lots of other things. I work as a designer now, and there's a project. I don't know if you've seen it. I was always very interested about the fact of getting something out of it. Like, what can I do from this world? Can I do I don't know, a show? Because I wanted to show the world. So I went with this idea, which is Elia is Still Alive. It's a show I would like to do in a way. So I'm very open to what you think. And I hope it's not too overwhelming. So it's a story of, she's the empress of Calces. Calces is the city I built. She is the city a bit like representing industry. And she comes from a very venerable bloodline, and she's destined to be like the empress of this kingdom. But one day she's hunting with her father, and she falls into like a trap, like Alice in the Wonderland, and she discovers this world. And this world, it was kind of a tale and like a legend, and a place that people never heard about, but only in stories. And in this place, humans, they have blended lifestyles, cities, objects, spiritual beliefs, deeply connected with the cycles of life. They have created complex relationship with life using technology. And, they start from, each of them start from the ecosystem. They are living it. There is a writer in France, it's called Baptiste Morisot, he called it the milieu. It's like the environmental sphere with its logic, the wind, the temperature, the living of the life, and they're connected to it. So they live with the moments of thrive, and they live with the moments of decay, and they blend architecture, lifestyle, everything with this. And so it creates like a very unique and ancient civilization that have always evolved with this need of like, we need harmony, we need like accept this. Of course, there is like death, of course, there's like a war, of course, but there's this need of like, okay, we need to maintain this, and this is us, this is our identity. So she goes through this world, and it's like a travel of the hero. She likes she meets all the different people, different people from each civilization. She gets new friends from there, and she evolves as a person. She went to all these places. I have to time them. Okay. And she discovered why there is a disconnection, why she arrived in this world, why there is such a disconnection with the world she lives in, which is very pragmatic, control world, very 2D, and the world she lives in, which is very rich, very dangerous as well, but very rich. And one day, as the time passes, in the realm, there is she's already genetically strong. She's declared dead. People think she's dead, etc. But the rumors spread that she's alive, that she's still alive, and that she's going to come back to kick their ass because her father has been imprisoned because he has no heir. And so she comes back with all of the friends she made from the different civilization into this world, and the goal is that she destroys the city she was from, and she saves her father from there in a great war. I'm a very huge fan of Lord of the Rings, so it's a bit of a dream as well, And sorry for listening all of this. The reason for the show is very like a passion I have, and a side project, almost of a dream. I have to make this show, and I really would like to make it and to craft it with designers, historians, anthropologists, people from different backgrounds, to bring like truth in the different civilization, and of course scenarists. And voila. Thank you for listening, and I hope it interested you.
Thank you for sharing. Super rich set of work there. Maybe before Sandra goes, just very quickly, could you say what kind of is there any particular kind of feedback that you would appreciate, or just you would find for open discussion?
Yeah, open discussion. Anything you would like to say. It's kind of I've been working on it for a long time. And as you can see, it's very dearing for me. And I kind of start to build around it and wanted to, you know, to say, okay, if it's my life, let's make it fun as well, like Mateusz said. And yeah, let's go for it. And I don't know how to do it at first, but I'm very open to discussion. You know, it can be like even small thing. Yeah, I could grab the information from it. Could be interesting.
Sure. Okay. Maybe I'll just preempt Sandra just with a brief remark, because the first section that you shared, my mind kept going to I would love to see like it as almost like a historical reflection is where my mind went. Like as if it were done, not because initially you look at it, it's like, oh, this could be a graphic novel, let's say, for example. I'm not saying necessarily, but just imagining it as if this was a history book for a school student explaining how they got to where, you know, what the past was like. That's just my quick remark. But Sandra, go ahead.
First, I want to say how beautiful that was, and the work shows, and it's you know, I can say this quite honestly. You may not believe me, but I was engaged. I could almost start the story was almost playing in my head a little bit, and so that richness. My first thought was, I think you should talk to video game designers and maybe even video game studio. This would be a sweeping speculative epic like Foundation or something like. It's extraordinary. I know that's not what you're going for, but that's the first thing that jumped out at me. But I'm a nerd. This would be a great game. And the other thing, the kind of sub thing that got me was when you were talking about integrating nature with the architecture, right? Like, you know, all great games like that are where you're building a base, right? And that's the whole thing. Like you try to get a big base, but that's all about power and how many guns you have. You know, it's like traditional metrics or gameplay. But if you made something that was most like you somehow, and this is game design, which I'm not good at, but like, you know, you're somehow winning by being more in tune with what's around you to make the cheapest use of resources, even if you want to look, I guess, maybe mathematical or something like that. And it made me think of Taliesin West, Frank Lloyd Wright's place, which I was kind of a pilgrimage I did. And they didn't have a lot of money, and so they built this really beautiful building and structure kind of compound, but they only used the stuff that was around. So they used the local like stones and sand and everything, and they didn't even have windows because, you know, those didn't exist, right? They had like these canvases which didn't work, and eventually people like broke down their artistic. They made an exception in their artistic vision for windows, but like the whole idea, and the stones around there had runes from Native American past, like it's historical. And it's in Arizona, so it's like it's rock and stone and just vast blue skies, and it's just a wonderful place to kind of build a sandcastle. And it made me think of this. This made me think of that. So and that was another very pleasant presentation. Made me think of a wonderful nostalgia. But this is your story is I don't know. I'm engaged already. The work has paid off, if I can say that without sounding patriotic.
No, thank you very much.
Fantastic. Yeah.
I found that very interesting what you say about the fact of making a video game when you have to make everything harmonious, or as you said, like it has to be maintained in a harmonious state. It's very interesting because it's what interests me. It's like for me, it's something that doesn't exist, or maybe I don't see it, but the harmony with nature, the technology with it, this care doesn't really exist. And what you say for me, it follows that feeling I have, like building something that it flows naturally. I think your idea. I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, beautiful work.
Thank you very much for this.
Drew, you're up.
Thanks. Yeah. So yeah, gorgeous. Obviously, great world building, and it shows how much time you've put into it. The first thing I think of, and this is just because I'm immersing myself in this space right now, is an RPG, a role-playing game. I've been delving into solo RPGs. There's a number of there's there's a huge variety of systems, right? There's like the loner system, and DFI is a new one that came out, and then Dead Space is another loner system, and they've all got like interesting, unique mechanics. I first present that because, you know, if you design some mechanics around it, it would help you immerse yourself even further into this space, right? Because you could make your own characters in whatever age. And I love Julian's idea of it being like a history book, right? Because you could format the solo RPG like a history book, right? And then but then you would like you would co-create the history by taking on characters of a historical nature within one of the ages, right? And then you know, just using very simple mechanics, you know, just like maybe some polyhedral dice or cards or some, or they even use things like qualitative mechanics called tags. You could build your own character, and then you would be able to go through your own world and be embodied in your own world in that way, and then you could continue to flesh it out, and then maybe even you know, probably not what you're after, but like monetize it, right? Like, because the RPG world is just dying for things like this, right? It's a huge ecosystem and really accessible.
But how do you think? Because of course it will be amazing if if you can like make it in a video game, but like very simply, how do you think you do it? You know, like, oh, do I
that's
build
why
like a Bible, or as you said, like a piece of the game, or what's the winning what's the winning
format
argument,
I'm
or
thinking of is just like a zine format, right? And so you just have like the first one, it's very lightweight, very ephemeral, and you have like the character creation and the mechanics in it, and then you intersperse all of this great stuff that you have and the great illustrations in there as the narrative that the character goes through. So it's very, very accessible. You don't have to get a video game developer company or like spin it up in Replit or anything like that, right? But from building that, then you've already got an even better foundation to take it even further, right? If you go into the virtual digital space.
Okay.
Yeah, that codex, absolutely, Mateusz. That's exactly what I thought of when I saw it. But anyway, that's my contribution.
Yeah. Because I thought about it, but there's always the say of like, okay, I think it could be interesting, but I'm always like, for example, building a video game, it's so enormous budget, it's so complicated, so many people involved, and I was never sure like if there is people coming with ideas and say, okay, I built this world, what do you think about it? It could work, people would be interested, it's always been my doubts about it, but yeah.
Yeah, but if you're
Thank you.
building your own RPG,
Yeah.
then it's all you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've already shown like that you can commit to a project and and create something. It's almost like, don't maybe the point that Drew's making, which I think is spot on. It's like keep going, but maybe just go in this direction, and the direction might also sort of do in fun ways, like continue to evolve your kind of world building, refine it, but now you've got a particular form, container. So your container isn't going to be a 16:9 slide. It's going to be a zine that maybe sort of evolves into part of the instruction set or the material that comes, if it were a boxed RPG, it doesn't have to be, but let's say it came in a box. It'd be like, oh, wait, what's this? Here's a whole zine. This is like the story, the lore. Here's a newspaper that came from that world. And then, you keep building, and then all of a sudden it becomes, you start seeing your way to get, I mean, I think you would have to probably get into a little bit of the RPG universe, at least understand like what the idioms are and what the structures are and how these things, people put these things together. But sometimes I think there are RPGs that are basically just like a single card of instructions. That's it.
Okay.
Mateas.
Thank you for this.
Yeah, great presentation. Love to see it. It feels like two different parts, right? So it feels like the world building is like that seems to be the main interest, and like the story is mostly how to apply all the work you put into the world building to present the world building. So the story itself, you could create a million different stories based on this.
Exactly.
Like one of my initial the first deck you showed, my initial reference was also a game, and that was Dwarf Fortress. I don't know if you've seen it, but Dwarf Fortress is a fantastic game. It's like you're controlling a bunch of dwarves who have to build a fortress, and you're being attacked by things and so on. And so it's like a city resource management, city planning, blah blah. But the thing you do is when you start the game, you initialize it by giving some conditions, and then you can see the game writing the whole history of the place, which includes like geographical history of famous battles. So you have like heroes of battles. These are people you will never meet, but they form like the lore of the world in which you work. So I thought, and that's just an automatic generator, but it still gives you a very deep understanding of the place you are. I thought that was great. I think the Codex Seraphinius, I'm guessing you've seen it, but it's also a great way to present it. So that's if you haven't seen it, you can. I mean, it's expensive as hell to
What you
buy,
say?
but
The code, the what?
Codex Seraphinius. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I put the Wikipedia link in the chat. You can download it. I think you can download like PDFs of it, and it's an invented language. And it's like it's like a zoologist travel journal from a place that doesn't exist. And it's invented language, invented critters. It's a fantastic work of art. But that's also a different way to approach it, right? So that becomes in that case, it's a book that costs $150 you can buy, and that becomes an artifact from that whole world building thing. So I don't think that the story you presented is necessarily the most. I mean, if you really set on making a movie, go for it. I mean, but there's so much else you can do, like Drew said, right? Games.
That was I was like when I started doing it and I merged into the passion of world building. I was like, wow, there's so many things that it's kind of overwhelming, you know. But for me, it's important to have all the aspects are very interesting, but the emotional one, like feeling the world, for me, seeing it, feeling it's very important to me. So that's what I thought about like a movie, but it can be a game, it can be anything, but like movie or a show or even a pilot or I don't know what. But for me, this was the why I crafted a story, and the story is like Joseph Campbell. You know, I was very interested in it, so you know, Travel of the Hero. So it's kind of originated from this. But you're right about your assumptions. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So what it reminded me of first when you went through the history was La Planète Sauvage, which is a French movie from I think the 80s or something like that. And so like that's what I thought of first, and but then you went into the story of this empress, and I thought this reminds me very much of like The Witcher, which is a video game. Polish video game or from a Polish studio. It has this lore to it and all this mystery and all these different artifacts and all that. And then I thought like Mateus's forms kind of could be almost like the documents, the official documents of like perhaps this government apparatus from this world, kind of. For some reason, I connected the dots there. I'm not sure if that was necessarily meant to happen, but I just sort of thought it was a nice segue that we had.
There's a thing of language. Oh, sorry, I cut you. But
yeah, exactly. Yeah, language and all that. And then I thought like there was a zine mentioned, but also like there's a lot of beautiful board games in the style of Dungeons and Dragons that have these kind of maybe perhaps a condensed version that we could play on as a board game, and we could be the different factions that are in this like this great war that happens, and then we just kind of get the prehistory. But then there's so much you could do with the prehistory that it almost reminds me of the Hobbit series. Because you did mention that you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, so there's all the world building that was done prior to that. So it's really wonderful, like how earthly it is, or how human it is, yet how out of this world it is, what you've created. So, yeah.
Thank you. And I even thought about a game like Death Stranding. Death Stranding. And you know, if they would be like walking in this place when you have a, you know, you have a past and you have a, so it's very mixed in terms of civilization, and they'd be walking in it. You'd be like discovering some parts. Maybe you have to bring some, you know, resources to a place to another. So yeah, it's kind of yeah, another good idea.
Benjamin, and then we'll move on to Stan's side project share.
Sure. I just wanted to really deep world building, loved it. Similar to Julian, my first reaction wasn't the game, hilariously, but I was envisioning. So I'm Canadian, and so a lot of our museums focus on like our natural history and like the native population. And I was envisioning like stepping into like a museum and being walked through the history of this culture with real artifacts, you know, surrounding like music and art, written artifacts, and you know, being brought through the progression, like a physical space embodying the timeline progression, all that kind of stuff. And I thought that like the level of detail and the world building that you were doing like would lend itself to that kind of experience really, really well. And I just, you know, it's very fascinating. And not to be the AI guy, but I'm kind of in AI, and like I feel like this is the type of thing that generative AI specifically is like really good at potentially assisting in executing, because it's like it takes, you know, the natural laws of the world, and then you apply your own opinion to it to generate these artifacts. So like rather than trying to create 1,000 articles, like you could use AI to do those things faster. And so it might be a tactic to actually do some of those things. And anyway, it's really cool. And then I did want to just say, so I don't talk about this a lot, but I do have a background in gaming and esports. I worked at Riot Games in 2012.
I've played lots of video games with. I have 3 brothers. So yeah, Dungeons and Dragons, and my brother, he does video game. Another one does video games. So we're kind of in that. You know, we're very geek about this. So
well, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn, and you know, I there's one game designer that I know of that's into kind of like futuristic, you know, well-being of the world that might be, you know, if I'll see if he has some, if you're interested, I can see if he's, you know, if you want to get to
I'd be glad to.
happy to try and make a connection for you.
Oh, thank you very much. And yeah, very interesting. And I go quick because you have another person afterwards. But very interesting to have like the parametrics of the natural world. If you know, you can build like all the natural laws, and you can build your own laws that create the architecture, like data from object and lifestyle. Very interesting. And yeah, thank you very much all. It's been very rich, and thank you for all your feedbacks.
Why don't so Stan had to take a bio break, and Karis just raised their hand. So why don't we, Karis, why don't you? What do you got?
Okay, cool.
I was waiting for you to raise your hand, actually.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
So I left a little comment in the comment section, in the message section. I don't know if you read it, but I was asking if you are aware of ecosystemic processes. I actually did my master's thesis on ecosystemic architecture. Very quickly, what it's about is like some like scientists have studied the ecosystems, and there are different, like they have a certain number of processes that are the same across all ecosystems. And I was wondering if you could use these processes to actually build your world, because you talked a lot about it is really integrated with nature, and I feel like you haven't yet, maybe I'm mistaken, but you haven't yet explored what it means to be integrated with nature. So you have general ecosystemic processes and principles, like someone talks about resourcefulness, which is using the minimum amount of energy to have the maximum impact, or using the resources, the local resources, to perform the processes, which are generally to sustain life and to reproduce life. So what I can do, if I can share you a link to my master's thesis, and at the end you have the original PhD that inspired me, and you have kind of a table with different ways these processes can be implemented in architecture, but to me, architecture is linked to everything. So I'm sure you will find inspiration for all the aspects of the world you're building. I think when you don't know these processes, it's hard to build something concrete, like beyond just saying, I want my architecture to be regenerative, or I want my work to be integrated with nature. So that's just what I wanted to share with you.
It's more about I'm not a biologist. I haven't done like PhD in the way nature works. I've been just like following the way architects and designers have integrated it. And I think on my small knowledge, it's more about like blending in a rhythm, like birth, decay, like the work, for example, of Neri Oxman or Julian Graves. You know, they integrate like the fact that it's a bit alive, I would say. And yeah, of course, it's a bit embryonic. It's more like intuitional and sensitive work I do. And of course, it's of course there is a. I'm not going to revolution and be completely accurate, but I try to, yeah. If you can bring me some of your work, I'd be very interested to yeah, be very interested. If you can put it on the.
Yeah, I'll share the link. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
Congrats
Kurt.
for your work.
No, thank you, Kurt.
Cool. That was good stuff. Thank you for sharing that. And so now we'll just move on to Stan.
Okay, so I will pretend that what I'm about to show you is more of a palette cleanser from all the visuals that we have seen, because it is very sparse in terms of design. I'd say it's probably more about the trying to brainstorm the ideas. So please let me know if you can see my screen. Okay, great. So I had this idea when I was working at a place that it's basically a power generator. It's a company that makes energy here in Canada. And I thought, well, in all the different power stations where they make energy, and they have this culture of like nuclear safety and so on. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if we have something like this, but for our for mental health, and more specifically, if we find ourselves in a situation where we need kind of like a first aid mental health, or a mental health first aid, like a station, you know, like imagine like the eye cleaning station that you have at like a Home Depot store, a hardware store, or something like that. If something gets spilled, or the fire extinguisher that you can reach to, but basically using that as a way to bridge this gap between people that are neurodiverse and neurotypical. Now, obviously, there's a spectrum there, and we don't necessarily need to identify ourselves as who's who. In fact, that's often discouraged. But whoever, you know, we know ourselves, and when we do have the need for a mental health first aid, then it could be in our pockets as an app on our phone, for instance. I did do a quick search on this, and I couldn't find a whole lot about that, but we have this power of AI now that could be this algorithm that could be sort of massaged or set up in a way that could perhaps help us with that. I did list a few different roles and audiences that could be involved. There is existing EAP apps and EFAP and all that, which is employee assistance, but they kind of point to like other places, so they're more of a hub. Whereas I'm thinking of perhaps something that will be, they'll have like a one-stop shop, all the tools you need. And the work that inspires me of that is something that I came across when I worked in the nonprofit sector as an instructional designer, which is the national standard of Canada on the psychological health and safety. It has 13 factors, which are kind of like listed here. These 13 factors are on specific things like organizational culture, and civility and respect, workload management, things like that. So there's obviously not all of these will apply to the case that I'm trying to work through here, but some examples of situations that we come across that this could really be helpful is perhaps conflict resolutions between coworkers or coworkers and managers, or difficult conversations that we have at the workplace. I think there is a strong communication gap between people that are neurodiverse and neurotypical. So often we don't know what kind of approach to use or how to express ourselves, and particularly in corporate culture, this is quite prevalent. So I try to put together a sort of a problem statement. I'm not sure how well I landed with this. So I try to focus on a particular set of stakeholders, and in this case, also a particular set of problems that we come across. I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can take a look if you like for yourself. But my goal is to focus on a kind of a just-in-time approach. And I'm taking inspiration from my practice as an instructional designer. I like more of a pull strategy as opposed to a push strategy. So instead of pushing resources onto the user and telling them, here, look, take this or take that, it's more like, well, I need something right now. I think I know what I need, and this is how I can get it. So that's I don't know what the actual solution could be to this, but it is an idea that's been stuck in my mind and that I've wanted to action on, and as a side project to see how far I can get it. I'm sure that there's different solutions out there that are sort of a combination of that kind of solve this problem, but this is I'd like to find something that's going to be more unified. So that's my idea. That's my side project.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Mateas.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. And I think it's a really worthwhile cause and a difficult problem to solve. I had one reference that came to my mind was like the researcher Jan Chipchase. I think Julian might know him, right? Told about a project he did at Nokia, which was Nokia wanted to sell a cheap phone for I forget if it was India or if it was a region in Africa, right? So they wanted to do something that was cheap where literacy was low. So how can we make a phone to allow SMS communication and phone communication for people who might not be literate, as well as perhaps email or WAP access or whatever? And what they found was that when they did when they did research for potential users, people didn't want to have a phone which looked branded as if it was branded towards people who couldn't read. So they would actually prefer a phone that they couldn't use properly than one that would show everyone that they were illiterate. And I'm thinking this as a reference, if the solution you come up with somehow that it carries a social stigma, right? Because today we might not have functional ways to deal with in the workplace to deal with neurodivergence and so on, but the onus of fixing it is on management and better people skills and awareness building and all these things. But if you relegate it into a technical solution, then becomes okay, we can't really talk to that guy. Well, just take the gizmo and do everything through that. And then it becomes what initially was supposed to be a tool for helping and bridging these gaps in understanding becomes, well, okay, we have a technical solution. Now I don't have any personal responsibility towards learning about the other person. I just go through this gizmo or web page or whatever tool you have, right? So this is not an answer to your question. I was just came to think about how can you do it in a way which doesn't absolve people of the responsibility of being, you know, inclusive and minding other people's different approaches.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I guess Sandro.
Hi, Stan. Thanks for showing this. I like the origin story of, if I heard you correctly, that you got the idea from how a nuclear plant essentially has a bunch of risk mechanisms to detect excessive heat, right? That's what it all comes down to. And I could see that kind of metaphor carrying over into the workplace, where I've seen attempts at mental health help beyond you know, human interaction, but they have rooms where people could go. There were rooms that were dedicated with, you know, were quiet, and you could lie down, and so on and so forth, and various other ideas. And the difficulty always is to get people to use them, right? And you know, how do you know that you're actually in trouble, right? And that's if that could be surfaced in some way, if there was a way to take the kind of a heat map of the what would you call this, emotional state or something like that in a meeting, in an interaction, by observing a person's output, the language they use, the amount of output, the quality of their outputs. I hate to be all corporate about it, but I just think that way. But measurement, and then from that be able to nudge people into doing something themselves, because that's the only way this would work, where they would kind of check in with their buddy and ask like a friend, like how do you think I'm doing, and or something like that. That seems interesting to me. I may have completely misunderstood what you're going for, but understanding psychological difficulty in the workplace is difficult enough, and then getting people to actually act on it is the other difficult part. And so yeah, this kind of this idea is sort of embryonic enough that I think maybe there could be new ideas attached to it in terms of you know, how this actually enters someone's life and becomes part of their health without a sense of being obligated to do something or feeling imposed upon, or just kind of fake ritualized. You know, every week you get 3 hours off or something, but you may not need that 3 hours then in that week. You may need 6 hours next week in the middle, right? So when to actually help people release, I guess, the heat. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's funny enough, I did have a similar kind of conversation with a manager once about that. Yeah, that does go along with the lines of thinking that I have. Thank you. Caris, is it? I'm not sure I'm pronouncing the name correctly.
It's Paris. Well, you can pronounce it however you want. There is a different pronunciation for each language. I don't have a specific, well, I would say thank you because this is needed. I basically, that was one of the reasons I lost my previous job. Like my previous employer basically told me that if I'm neurodivergent and I can change my brain, then we can work together. So it's very, very needed. What I have three things that come to mind that's not really focused, but just for your inspiration. There is a podcast that's called The Anxious Achiever. I don't know if you heard about that. And there are lots of episodes about how to work as a neurodivergent. So you would have some experts on the podcast that maybe you could be inspired by in your work. Another thing I'm thinking about, you talk about first aid, mental health first aid. I don't know if that's something you came up with or if you've already heard about it, because recently I've heard about, again, a French. I'm sorry, almost all my resources are going to be French. There is a French healthcare worker who has kind of developed this concept and is working on it. So I don't know if you heard about it. So, but I can share a link. Maybe you can investigate what is already done. And the third thing is another French resource. I don't know if you heard of. I think her name is Fanny Nussbaum, and she kind of popularized the concept of high potential in the francophone world. And she had written like a book to help people understand themselves and help people understand neurodivergent people. And then she came to the conclusion that people don't want to do that. And I totally agree with her. People don't want to be like, they don't want their habits to be disturbed. So she wrote a second book to help neurodivergent people understand neuroatypical people, and that's called. I've started reading it, haven't finished because I'm starting a lot of things that I don't finish. But it was very eye-opening, and it just basically gave the the rules to live in this, like, amongst the majority of people. And so what I'm trying to say with this is that I believe it's going to be, I'm not really hopeful that, like, most people will try to do the work to communicate with people who are different. But we can have like a not a self-defense, but like we can auto-medicate, if I can say. Maybe trying to find a tool that helps us mostly to auto-medicate. And if people want to, like, to have this conversation, they can get it, but it's primarily aimed at neurodivergent people. Like, that being said, I'm not saying I'm neurodivergent. I don't know. I haven't been diagnosed or anything. Just some people think I am, but just being a weird person to a lot of people, that's my experience.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Lots of ideas there. Thanks. Scott.
Hey, yeah, just building on what some people have said. My dad was worked at the Chalk River nuclear plant a bazillion years ago. I don't know if he was neurodivergent. Well, he was to some degree, but and he would have loved this project. Um, I think so much of it is like how it's introduced. I really loved Mateus's kind of metaphorical example is, I don't know, that to me it's like a framing challenge. How is this in people's lives? I don't, and another random metaphorical project would be like, do you know this art project called Conflict Kitchen, which is kind of a pop-up restaurant that serves different cuisine within a country that, and the cuisine that's serving is the country that they're in conflict with. So it's just a way to like frame a conversation about that enemy. So I'm just thinking, to me, there's a lot of the science part, but it seems like, I don't know your role in this, but maybe a lot of interesting and rich exploration will be how this is even situated or introduced or like becomes part of habit. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a great point to think about. Appreciate that. Mark?
Hey, yeah. So this might be of interest to you, and I'm happy to talk about it separately. We're currently working on a project that is dealing with kids that's focused on detecting strengths and weaknesses in executive function. So essentially a set of like 16 bits of executive function. I don't know how well it'll translate. And one of the things is also we are in a scenario where we have transcripts. And what we can do with those transcripts is actually extract using AI the kind of strengths and weaknesses and identifying where they are and also progression over time. So I'm not sure if that's something that's interesting to you, but there might be translation, although we are specifically not diagnosing anything. We're simply looking for patterns and then bringing up educational, because I also work in education quite a bit. And so we're bringing up educational resources that work on filling gaps or accelerating strengths, that kind of thing.
So in a past life, I worked for a company that work in education, and they provided accessibility services based on basically kind of individualized educational plans for kids that have had those kinds of or diagnosis already done. And this particular company was providing kind of learning strategies and different tools in their toolkit to be able to tackle their workload. And without going into too much detail about this, this sort of so mental health accessibility, this in education, this sphere has been very much an interest of mine and something that it's been a lot more than a passion project, and I've been wanting to pursue that. So I'd love to connect outside of this.
Yeah, find me LinkedIn, probably the best way to find me. And
okay, sounds good. Thank you.
All right.
I'm not sure if anybody else has anything else to say. I'm guessing we're almost out of time. A couple of minutes left, but yeah.
I would guess I sort of think of these things. So it's amazing, and again, just to kind of underscore what other people said, like this would be remarkable, even just to do the project, run it through, just to understand, I guess, maybe the sort of context you're working in more thoroughly. I start thinking about like I start thinking about this thing in the world. So what would be the, I'm not saying there's a direction going in, and I don't want to over-index on where you might be imagining this, this becomes, but it's like if there were like a brochure for this, like a trifold brochure, what might it be saying? If this were something that were going to be, let's say, part of a health maintenance program that you get at work, and it's like, here's all the literature for the health plan, here's dentists, all the specialists we offer, and if this were something that were as normal as anything else that you might expect from a health benefit plan, or not even health benefit, if this were a service that were offered at a bodega, you're on the corner, if it was just kind of in the world and it was accepted and normal, a bus, the thing you see on the side of a tram, big advertisement for something, or a public service announcement, that's just where my head starts going in terms of trying to make sense of what it might be like to have in the world. So, I'm totally down with it. I think it's a great idea to explore it and kind of go into it. And then also, at the same time, how do you augment the description of what you're trying to work on for people who are maybe, I don't get what you're talking about, or what do you mean? Can you give me some examples? And you could give them examples, or you could also give them the brochure that you mocked up, maybe with as much, sort of like what, could even be like, what Mateas did for his presentation just, an hour ago. Trying to flip the problem around. I'm not saying that that's necessarily all the work that you do, but just as another way of kind of getting into this. So you presented, you've got a few slides here, and this is great. This is kind of gets us into it. If you were just to try adding a little bit more resolution to that, visual or feeling or understanding, just as an additional angle into the project. I'm not saying anything's wrong with what you presented. I just started imagining, like, I want that brochure. Like, what would that be like? Or the advertisement. Yeah.
I want to. So one of the things that I'm working on is I'm always trying to add new pieces to my portfolio, and there's so much in here that I'd like to unpack. One of the things that I did do is for one of the nonprofit companies that I work for, is I actually built a training framework on these 13 factors, and I use something called action mapping, and it goes a little bit beyond action mapping. It's more like content mapping. So I was mapping what kind of training would be appropriate for in a workplace for these 13 factors based on the actions that they would presuppose and the different roles and all that. It ended up being this huge matrix. I was working with this other person. She was my researcher, so she was pulling all the resources that would be really good for that. And unfortunately, that matrix that we created, her and I, is property of that company, so we couldn't really take that with us. But the just the act of doing that, it created this massive system and sort of a if you will, a mental model in a way that we didn't really expect. It just grew. And we realized that there's so much more there, other than just, I mean, I've picked a small little nugget there on bridging that communication. It's so vague still. And the idea of a sort of a first aid station came because of the immediacy, that the kind of like feelings that you have, whether or not you're neurodiverse, or you have like, you're pushed by different feelings, like, oh my God, like I'm gonna have this fight or flight sort of instinct. Yeah, sorry, Mark.
Yeah, just based on what Julian was saying, I was just thinking about an object, which is, because I'm just looking at your problem statement, what kind of object would in real time kind of measure the gap, right? Like, what might that look like?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you got this problem, so you have this thing that's sitting in between as you're talking to somebody else. You know, it's somehow, there's some kind of meter that says the gap between you is growing greater, or that, you know, like something that in real time, it as a kind of like a fictional object, right? That helps kind of describe what's happening. I don't know, it's just something that popped up that I think is an interesting kind of real-time meter or measurement.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, good stuff. The other thing that just came to my mind quickly before we finish is I've done this. I did this in a workshop a few weeks ago, where in order to help people kind of wrap their heads around their discussion, is I had them write in one form or another, like this little corner of the world that they imagined. This was a very kind of early, 101 kind of workshop with people who maybe not used to workshopping or whatever. And then I had them shove their notes and their thoughts, they write a few paragraphs into Notebook LM and have it generate, it does the podcast generation thing, have it generate a podcast. And then not only that, they had to imagine that this was a podcast from the future that they were imagining. So they had to instruct, the AI to be like, no, don't write about this stuff. Write as if this is part of the world. Just like a news report might, or a podcast talking about contemporary issues might. That's it. I think that's another. I found it very useful and very quick. It's not, the work's not done, but it's just like, okay, now I can get, an AI to talk about my world as if it's talking about the world and not just responding to me. If you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yes.
no, absolutely. I did something similar with careers, because I'm on a bit of a career journey right now. I would like to reimagine myself as something other than an instructional designer, even though that's quite multifaceted already. I did something similar, where I basically got the AI to come up with these personas, these stories of different people that have ADHD and ASD, kind of a mixture of the two, and it was really cool. But I've never thought of the notebook LM to use that as a tool, and then it's so that's a really cool idea. Really, thank you for this. I appreciate it. I did not expect, quite frankly, to be with so much positivity and so many great ideas. I've been kind of beating myself up over this idea, thinking like, oh, nobody cares about it, and it's a problem that somebody else has solved already, sort of thing. But this is fantastic. I also want to say that as a first timer, I will definitely come back. This is a fantastic group, and I did hear earlier something about a Discord, so I'd like to hang around there as well if that's possible. Thank you.
Yeah, just send me. I'll figure out a better way to share the link, but just send me an email, and I'll send you an invite to it. The whole Discord invite thing is it's fine. We'll get you in. It's just like it's like rewiring a turn of the century house to get modern electricity going. It's real pain, but we'll sort that out. No problem. Yeah, sure thing. Cool. Appreciate everyone. That was super fun. Good sesh. Good sesh.
Very cool.
Yeah. Thanks for hosting, Julian.
Sure thing, man.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks for all the work.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for showing.
So yeah, everyone enjoy the weekend, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye,
Ciao.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.